Our goals for this webinar are first to provide the guidance for data reporting tasks this year. Second, we'll take a minute and provide an update on any changes to program accountability due to the ongoing COVID disaster declaration. Third, we'll go over some resources available to you for reporting 2020-2021 data, as well as I'll review some system enhancements that we hope will make your reporting easier. Finally, this is a great time to gather your thoughts and questions around ASEP reporting this year so that we can publish responses for the good of the group. Let's review some relevant terms that I'll be referencing in the presentation today. First, as we all know, EPP is the Educator Preparation Program, which you are here representing today. The CDN is the unique 6-digit county district number that is assigned to each EPP. Every program the EPP offers is under the same CDN. ECOS, or ECOS, is the Educator Certification Online System which houses the educator data statewide. ASEP, or ASEP, is a term for the Accountability System for Educator Preparation Programs and is also a drop-down menu in the ECOS for Entities green screen. This is important because everything under the ASEP menu locks each year and cannot be updated after the lock. Some roles that may be referenced today are, first, the EPP Legal Authority, who is the ultimate responsible party for the EPP. All official communications are sent to the legal authority, and that individual is the person authorized to sign documents on behalf of the EPP and manage EPP staff access to ECOS for Entities. Some EPPs have identified a backup legal authority who can assist with those duties. The certification officer, first and foremost, recommends certificates. However, in many EPPs, that role may also be responsible for other areas, such as admissions, test approval, and/or state reporting. Some EPPs have a person whose function is specifically to report data each year. Whoever does the reporting for your programs would need to have the ASEP update role in ECOS for Entities. Before we get into the reporting detail in this webinar, let's take a step back and get some context. Texas Education Code, or TEC, and Texas Administrative Code, or TAC, require EPPs to report specific information and data to the state annually. Some of the data the EPPs report and TEA collects is used to determine EPP accreditation status. Other data is required because TEA must provide that data to consumers. Either way, it is important that whatever data is reported or collected is accurate. The Figure 19 TAC 229.1c contains information about data calculations used to determine EPP accreditation status and the performance standards that EPPs are expected to meet. The Figure 19 TAC 229.3F1 contains additional information about data that is required to be collected from EPPs. One thing that I want to note before we move forward is that as of today, the decision to make 2020-2021 a report-only year has not been finalized. The State Board for Educator Certification, or SBEC, has approved the proposal to give all EPPs a status of not rated, declared state of disaster, and to make all data report only at their meeting in July. But this proposal won't be adopted until October. It is important to note that if 2020-2021 is determined to be a report-only year, EPPs would be required to report data as specified in TAC and TEC, but there would not be any accreditation decisions made on that data. Let's look at the next slide that puts some detail around this. Because of the disaster declaration that remains in place, some rule changes have been proposed to the ASEP regarding EPP accountability and accreditation for 2020-2021. The ASEP approved the proposal in July, but have not yet adopted the changes. If the ASEP adopts the rule changes in October, then EPPs will be given an accreditation rating of not rated, declared state of disaster for the reporting year 2020-2021, which is a decision that is in line with the approach that has been taken at the K-12 level. This would limit the impact on EPP accountability of candidate testing, field supervision, and the various required surveys that have been disrupted. Again, these updates are still to be adopted by the ASEP. Additionally, it is important to note that the requirement for EPPs and for TEA to report data has not been waived or modified. Data must be reported and must be complete and accurate, even if it is not used to determine EPP accreditation status. This slide frames up the continuum of reporting and where we are in that process. Note the gold circle. We are this close to reporting time. The timeline reflects that this reporting year began September 1st, 2020. TEA has attempted to stay in lockstep with EPPs about matters of state reporting, hoping to assist EPPs with a smooth 2020-2021 reporting experience. In October, TEA hosted a retrospective webinar that was focused on learnings from the 1920 reporting year that could be used to begin with the end in mind for 2021 reporting. In March, TEA held a mid-year update and sent EPPs some mid-year data sets to assist in reconciling the 2021 data up until that point. Additionally, the IT team at TEA has worked on a number of enhancements to the ECOS for Entities green screen that should provide additional support to EPPs as you ensure all data is reported timely and accurately. We will learn more about those features in a moment. Hopefully your EPP staff have been uploading data for all of your programs throughout the academic year, and therefore only finishing touches are required to complete your data at this point. So here we are now in August, and state reporting for 2021 data is right around the corner. The due date does not change since it is specified in TAC. The due date is still on or before September 15th. And the data you report does not change because we just learned on a previous slide the data reporting requirements in TAC have not been waived or modified. The data reporting manual remains the best resource for EPP staff on detail and instruction around required reporting, especially for those that are new to the process. There are useful examples and screenshots. The manual is available on the Program Provider Resources page. An updated version of this manual was recently posted on the day you received email notifications from TEA about some ECOS for Entities enhancements. Additionally, the education specialists at TEA are always a resource, including for state reporting assistance. When you do need to seek assistance from a live person at TEA, please make your first stop one of the education specialists. We can usually provide the assistance that you need. If not, we will pull in Mark or Jessica or others for additional support. Mark is definitely the expert on data and reporting, but he is only one person. So if everyone calls him directly with questions about state reporting, the call volume gets overwhelming. So during state reporting time, unless you're just calling to say howdy to Mark, please call the education specialist first for assistance. To assist you with reconciling your data, TEA has prepared various data sets. You recently received principal and teacher survey rosters that you could use to verify and request exceptions to the survey data set. Roster verification is now complete. Next, you can expect to see preliminary data sets of observation data delivered by secure email to your legal authority or primary point of contact and to the certification officer or designated ASEP reporting staff by September 3rd, 2021. EPPs can easily generate an admission report to verify their own admission data, so TEA will not send those data sets. For this purpose, as well as for ongoing communications, it is important for your EPP to keep TEA updated when there are changes to these staff. If you've had a recent change in legal authority, primary point of contact, and/or certification officer, please make sure we have that contact information. Your education specialist can process those updates. This is an overview of what you should have completed or should be in process of completing to prepare to submit your data on September 15th. First, track numbers of applicants that applied to the EPP for all programs from 9/1/2020 to 8/31/2021. As in past years, the EPP must report the number of folks that applied to the EPP throughout the 2021 academic year. This is for all programs within your EPP, such as your undergraduate teacher program, your post-bac principal program, your school counselor program, and so forth. If you have not tracked applicants throughout the year, you'll need to gather that information before September 15. We'll talk about this in more detail on another slide. Note the second to-do item says to ensure admitted candidates have a complete admission record. Some of you have created admission records but have not reported subject-specific content hours and the related GPA for your teacher candidates, or have not reported SAT, ACT, or GRE scores if applicable. Admission records should be reviewed and updated where necessary, so they are a complete and accurate representation of all required areas for that candidate. Note that an ECOS enhancement was just completed that allows the EPP to make edits to the editable fields in admissions using bulk upload as well as manually. Update candidate status on the finisher records list. For the 2021 reporting year, candidates in all programs and classes within your EPP are either finishers, if all requirements were finished at any point in 2021, or they are other enrolled if they are still in process of completing requirements. If they left your program for any reason during the year, they should be removed. Note the last to-do item reminds you that reporting observations is required for all teacher and non-teacher candidates completing clinical teaching, internship, or practicums in all of your EPP program areas. If you have not started uploading observations, you are strongly encouraged to do so now. If you wait until the last minute, ECOS may be overwhelmed with users and tends to slow way down at that point. Note that a recent enhancement to ASEP changed the data validation dates so that the reporting year for observation starts 9/1 instead of the previous 7/1. So if any observations were or are to be completed this summer, they should be reported in the 2020-2021 reporting year data set. Let's take some time now to step through some of the areas in which you will be reporting data. The first area is admissions data. The first item of business when a candidate is admitted into your EPP is to create an admission record. This must happen within 7 days of admission. When you create the admission record, ECOS courteously places that candidate onto your test approval list for each test required for the certificates you identified in the admission record. The status of course is eligible because the EPP determines test readiness and when to approve testing. Additionally, the candidate is placed onto the finisher records list with a status of other enrolled. It is important to note that you have until August 31st to create admission records for candidates that may have fallen through the cracks and were admitted with no admission record created. You will have until September 15th to create an admission record for anyone admitted with an admission date in the last week of August 2021. What should EPP staff be doing right now? As we said earlier, you will need to ensure each candidate in your EPP in any program, including teachers and non-teachers, admitted from 9/1/2020 through 8/31/2021, has an admission record that completely and accurately reflects the area or areas in which the candidate was admitted and all applicable admission data for that candidate. Admission records can be created either individually by using the admissions search option in ASEP, or if you have a bunch to enter, prepare a CSV file and upload them using the upload admissions option. Remember I said earlier that a recent enhancement will allow you to edit some fields using an upload. For example, if you did not include the SAT or ACT scores for your teacher candidates, then you can go back and add them now via upload. Extending our thinking for a minute about SAT and ACT scores. TEA staff receive questions each year about when or if to report SAT, ACT, or GRE scores. The answer is that TAC requires you to report them if your institution collects them from candidates. This would be applicable to university-based programs that may require those scores for admission into the university undergraduate or graduate programs. Also, if a non-teacher candidate is admitted into any non-teacher program with a GPA below 2.5, then the GRE score is required and must be reported. As a reminder, the admission record is supposed to be created within 7 days of the date of formal admission. So all of your candidates should have an admission record. That makes your data review and reporting a whole lot easier at this point. To make reporting easier and to help you problem solve issues, let's look at some areas in which common errors occur. First, you should not be able to create an admission record for someone that is enrolled in the same certificate area in any EPP. This is intentional and helps EPPs keep data clean. The related error message is reliable and also conveniently identifies the county district number of the EPP in which the candidate is already enrolled, so that you can reach out to the other program as necessary to straighten out your records. A second area in which we see errors is in the upload process, particularly in the format of the CSV file. As you all know, the CSV file is sensitive to formatting. So for a no-hassle way to check the formatting, open your CSV file with Notepad. Stray marks, spaces, and lines are easy to spot in the Notepad version. In that case, just correct the error in Notepad and save. We will have a slide later that shows that process. Also, when creating the admission record, the certificate and route identifiers must agree. The certification route must agree with the cert license ID selected for the certificate, and the certificate must agree with the role. Notice in the picture The candidate is enrolled in an alternative certification program seeking LOT Spanish. The cert license ID for LOT Spanish for an alternative certification program is 1262, which is different than the cert license ID for LOT Spanish for an undergrad or postbac program. Finally, LOT Spanish is a classroom teaching certificate. If you were to choose, let's say, principal as the role here, you would get an error message. Now for the quirks. The good news is that due to ongoing system enhancements, there is only one known quirk at this point, which is the roll code quirk from last year. When creating an admission record for a reading specialist, you just need to remember to use the roll code for a teacher, which is 029. There was an old roll code for the reading specialist, but the system does not see it now. Your life will be easier if you just select 029, which the system likes for both the reading specialist and a classroom teacher. This is likely not going to change going forward, so I think going forward, this will no longer be a quirk. We are frequently asked if the admission record should be deleted or changed if the candidate leaves the EPP after admission or changes certification categories after admission. The answer is no. The candidates leaving the program or seeking a new certificate category does not change the fact that the candidate was admitted in the original certificate category. Remember in an earlier slide, we pointed out that creating an admission record places the candidate into test approval and onto the finisher records list. If the candidate leaves the EPP, you will need to manually or through a bulk upload go into test approval and into the finisher records list and change the candidate's status to removed. If the candidate changes certificate area after admission, you would not alter the admission record and you would not add a new admission record. Instead, retain the written change request in the candidate's record and then go into test approval and into the finisher records list and update the information in each place to reflect the new certificate sought by the candidate. You can add or change either manually or using the bulk upload. Remember, admission of a candidate is an event. The admission record is a snapshot of that event, so should not be altered after the fact, unless you made a mistake. Most of the admission record is set up so that it cannot be altered or deleted by the EPP after the EPP has saved it. If you created an admission record in error, such as if the person was not ever admitted, or if you created the record with an incorrect TEA ID number, then you would need to contact your education specialist at TEA to delete that record for you. If you keyed in the incorrect route, for example, you would also need to contact TEA to correct that. Let's take a look at some areas of the admission record that can be edited by the EPP. As you are reviewing admissions data to ensure it is complete and accurate, you may need to edit various numbers, either due to initial data entry errors or to add forgotten data such as SAT, ACT, or GRE scores, if those are applicable to your EPP. If so, you can access the editable fields yourself, either through admissions search or through the maintain admissions options. Also, as I mentioned earlier, a recent enhancement to ECOS allows the EPP to make edits to the admission record using the upload process. To clarify some confusing areas that generate questions each year, first, overall GPA and admission GPA are required to be reported for candidates in all certification classes. These numbers may be the same or they may be different. Subject area hours and subject area GPA are required to be reported for teacher candidates only. And finally, SAT, GRE, and ACT scores are required to be reported if they are collected. And there will be more about this on the next slide. If any of the other fields must be edited, such as if you entered postbac but really intended to enter alternative for the route, or if you find the admission record should never have been created to begin with, as we said on the previous slide, your TEA education specialist can make the edit for you. Submit the request in writing via the help desk to Educator Preparation. To use the new enhancement that allows you to edit several admission records simultaneously through the upload process, just select Upload Admissions from the ASEP drop-down menu in the Ecos for Entities green screen. Select the current year and then Update Admissions from the new Upload Type drop-down menu that you'll see there. You will just then browse for your CSV file and upload. On the CSV file used for the update, any information you enter for the candidate in an editable field will be recorded as an update and will be captured in the audit trail in the Ecos for Entities purple screen. Ecos for Admins purple screen, I'm sorry. As I said earlier, each year we receive questions about whether or not to report SAT, ACT, or GRE scores. The rule requires that if your entity collects them, you must report them. If you are a university-based EPP and your university requires any of these scores for admission into the university, then your EPP must report them as admission data for your candidates. Additionally, if any EPP requires these scores for admission, such as the GRE that would be required for admission into non-teacher programs for an applicant whose GPA is below 2.5, then you're required to report the score for the applicable candidate. Admission data is used in several ways. If you've not visited the data dashboards on the TEA website, I encourage you to check them out. You'll find them on the consumer information page. Additionally, the EPP is responsible for maintaining an incoming class average of 3.0 or higher, which can be verified through GPA data collected from your admission records. Finally, the technology fee paid each year by the EPP is determined based on the number of candidates admitted in all certification programs within that EPP during the year. It is important that admission records are complete and accurate. Please take the time to review records to ensure they are complete and accurate before data is due on September 15th. The second area in which data is reported is candidate enrollment. The EPP must report the enrollment status of each candidate. This requirement has been in effect since the 2009-2010 reporting year. Prior to that year, only finishers were reported. You will find your old finisher lists up to 2008-2009 in the archived ASEP if you ever need to look at them. The current finisher records list is accessed via the Maintain Finishers link on the ASEP menu. The finisher records list that we use today is one list that can be filtered 4 ways. You can generate a list that shows all candidates, or you can filter the list to show only candidates with other enrolled status, or only candidates with finisher status. You can also see candidates you have removed. Due to a system enhancement last year, programs can update the enrollment status of multiple candidates simultaneously using a CSV file and bulk upload, which is likely pretty helpful to the larger programs. Your candidates can be placed on the finisher records list in a couple of different ways. First, the candidates designated as other enrolled at the close of 1 year will automatically populate the list as other enrolled in the next reporting year. In other words, they roll over. This is at once a good thing and a not so good thing. It's good because it saves the EPP work, not having to create a new list each year. This feature can be not so good, however, when forgotten candidates who have left the program continue to roll over year after year unnoticed. It's important to review this list each year and make sure it is an accurate representation of candidates enrolled in your programs. Creating an admission record also populates the candidate onto the finisher records list for the status of other enrolled. This is one of the features of the admission page that is a fantastic time saver for EPPs. Please note that the EPP cannot add a new person directly to the finisher records list without creating an admission record first. So what should EPP staff be doing now? For state reporting for 2021 data, you should verify and update, if necessary, the status of every person in each of your programs. Remember, after the 2021 reporting year logs in ASEP, you will no longer be able to update status. When reporting the enrollment status of candidates, remember that everyone remaining in your program by August 31st is either a finisher, because they finished all of your requirements by August 31st, or they are still working on requirements, so they are other enrolled. Another way to look at candidates' enrollment status is this. Anyone who left the program or was asked to leave the program during 2021 should have been removed from the finisher records list. All those remaining as of August 31st, 2021 need to have a status of finisher if they finished all EPP requirements at any point during the year, or other enrolled if they're not finished. Please note that finisher status is independent of standard certification or passing certification exams. There are 3 different ways to add, delete, or correct records for candidates on your finisher records list. First, you can search for an individual candidate using student search and update the record from the resulting student maintenance screen. You can also generate the finisher list via maintain finishers and change candidate status for an existing record from there. Remember to save your page when you're done. And finally, you can use the bulk upload option to add or delete a record or change the enrollment status for one candidate or for multiple candidates simultaneously. On a related note, the finisher records list should reflect exactly who is in your programs and who has finished in any given reporting year. It should also accurately reflect each certificate and supplemental certificate sought by each candidate in that reporting year. Remove candidates from the list or correct the information about candidates on the list as needed on an ongoing basis. Candidates who leave one route and then re-enroll in a new route may appear on the finisher records list as seeking the same certificate in 2 different routes, which is okay. For example, think about the teacher candidate that graduates non-cert from a university-based undergraduate program because he or she does not complete, let's say, clinical teaching. Then is admitted the following year to the alternative certification program at that university to complete requirements in the same certificate area. That candidate will be listed on the finisher records list in the traditional route and then in a following year in the alternative route. Candidates who quit the program or who are asked to leave the program should be removed from the finisher records list promptly at the point in the year in which they leave and should not be abandoned to roll over year after year on this list. I showed you this example last year, but it's still relevant as TEA continues to see this scenario. The screenshot on this slide is an example that simulates a record for a former EPP candidate who called into TEA to find out what he needed to do to complete his preparation and become standard certified. When we reviewed his records in ECOS, we discovered information similar to what you see in this screenshot. This candidate was enrolled in the EPP for 2 reporting years and then left the program. He should have been removed from the 2016-17 list, but was not. This candidate told me he was employed for several years outside of education, so it had no contact with the EPP from the 2016-2017 reporting year through the 2019-2020 reporting year. This individual should appear on this list only for the 2 years in which he was actually enrolled in the EPP. Before we move on to the next section, let's take a minute and summarize some key ideas regarding reporting candidate enrollment on the Finish Your Records list. First, if the candidate leaves your program, remove him or her from your Finish Your Records list. Second, when candidates finish your program, update their status on the Finish Your Records list. Third, if a candidate changes the certificate sought, including content area or route, update the Finish Your Records list. And finally, if a candidate adds another certificate area, add another row to the candidate's record with the additional certificate. The third reporting area is the data associated with the annual performance report. This report is a summary of candidate status as of the end of the reporting year and includes the number of EPP applicants as well. TEA populates most of the information in this report from data that you report in admissions and on the Finish Your Records list. The only numbers that TEA needs to complete this report but cannot access via ECOS are the applied numbers. There's no place in ECOS for an EPP to report the number of individuals that applied to each of the programs within the EPP. So the EPP will need to report those to TEA outside of ECOS on or before September 15th. What should EPP staff be doing now? Now is the time for you to gather the number of applicants that applied to each of the programs within your EPP for the 2021 reporting year. For example, that would include the number who applied to your undergraduate teacher program, your post-bac principal program, your alternative educational diagnostician program, and so forth. Let's look at how you will report those numbers to TEA. Thinking through the preparation process sequentially, an individual must first apply to an EPP before he or she can be admitted. EPPs are required to report the number of applicants that applied to your EPP for all programs during the reporting year. The numbers are reported as a total or all and must also be disaggregated by gender and race ethnicity groups. The number of applicants, or the applied number, must be equal to or greater than the number of persons admitted. Logically, an EPP cannot admit more candidates than the number that applied to be admitted. The process for you to report applied numbers this year will be the same as last year in that you will use this spreadsheet to submit the applied data. You will find the spreadsheet posted toward the bottom of the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. Download a copy of the spreadsheet to your computer. When you open the spreadsheet, you will see that it contains 2 tabs at the bottom. The first tab contains instructions and asks for you to complete the information in the yellow highlighted cells. It is important to complete this information so that TEA knows who submitted the data. Under the second tab, there will be a chart with some yellow highlighted cells in which you can record your actual applied numbers. To complete the all number in row 1, you will count the number of individuals that applied to each program within your EPP during the 2021 reporting year. For example, you would include all of the individuals that applied to your teacher undergraduate program, your teacher alternative certification program, your principal post-bac program, your superintendent alternative certification program, and so forth. You will report all applicants as one number and will not report them broken out by program. Next, you will disaggregate the all number in rows 2 and 3 by gender. and then complete rows 4 through 7 by disaggregating the all number by race ethnicity. If you don't have demographic information for one or more applicants, you still need to include those applicants in the all count, but would not include them in the demographic group count. In that case, your demographic group numbers would not add up to the all number, which is acceptable. When you're checking your work to ensure that your data is accurate, keep in mind that the total of rows 2 and 3 cannot exceed the all number in row 1. Likewise, the total number in rows 4 through 7 cannot exceed the all number in row 1. Also, remember to check the applied all number in row 1 against your admitted number in ECOS to make sure the applied all number is greater than or equal to the admitted number. To submit the spreadsheet containing your applied numbers, please use the TEA Help Desk system. This is the best process to use since the Help Desk does not cycle out tickets the way our email does. So we don't have to worry about losing something you've submitted in the avalanche of emails we get during state reporting time each year. Save the spreadsheet named as in the example on this screen, which includes the EPP County District Number _APR_applied 2021. Submit the saved spreadsheet to Data Reporting via the Educator Testing and Preparation Programs tile. There is no need to notify your education specialist that you've submitted the file, since the Help Desk system will send us an email when your ticket arrives. Data around field supervision is the fourth main area that you will report. Formal observations for all candidates completing clinical teaching, internship, or a practicum during the 2021 academic year must be reported. You will report all formal observations with dates from 9/1/2020 through 8/31/2021, including any extra formal observations that were completed in addition to the required minimum number. As we recommended in the ASEP retrospective in October, and again in our ASEP update webinar in March, we hope you've been uploading observations as they occurred throughout the year. This is an approach that can help you make sure you've not forgotten anyone so that your EPP can meet your 95% or higher completion requirement for field supervision. What should the EPP be doing right now? You should be putting the finishing touches to your observation data. The data sets you will receive from TEA will help you cross-check your final data. EPPs must report observations completed in 2021 for all candidates who participated in clinical teaching, internship, or practicum. Each candidate must meet or exceed the minimum number of required observations for the type of clinical experience in which the candidate participated. For example, if a candidate completed an internship while holding a probationary certificate, the minimum number of observations for that candidate would be 3. But if the program actually conducted 4 formal observations, then the EPP would report all 4 observations in ASEP. For your reference, the observation schedules for teacher and non-teacher candidates are found in 19 TAC 228.35G and H, respectively. It's important to note here that although teacher observations must be 45 minutes or more in duration, observations for non-teacher candidates might not be. The TAC requirement for non-teacher observations allows some flexibility in that field supervisors must conduct a minimum of 3 observations that total a minimum of 135 minutes. If you do the math, That's the equivalent of 3 45-minute observations. Data that you upload for a non-teacher candidate could include one observation that was 25 minutes, one that was 60 minutes, and the third that was 50 minutes. This is acceptable for non-teacher observations, so you can report these types of observations with confidence. Formal observations conducted by field supervisors for teacher candidates must be 45 minutes or more in duration for each observation. Candidates holding intern certificates issued under the governor's waiver, which we've been referring to as WENT certificates, are expected to have been provided field supervision according to the applicable observation schedule in 19 TAC 228.35G or H, and those observations must be reported in ASEP. Candidates that were issued probationary certificates under the governor's waiver or waiver pro certificates were finishers and therefore would not require field supervision. These candidates were not completing internships, so EPPs were not expected to conduct observations, and therefore you would not report observations for individuals holding waiver pro certificates. While we're on the topic of observations, let's take a quick sidestep and look at some developments in observations. Under normal circumstances, observations for teachers completing clinical teaching or internships are always in person, and observations for non-teachers completing practicums may be in person or virtual. Some rulemaking from the SBEC resulted in EPPs being able to conduct some virtual observations of teacher candidates in the 2021 academic year. The recent Senate Bill 1590 has further impacted observations by allowing some observations to be completed virtually in a manner equivalent in rigor to in-person observations. All observations conducted by field supervisors in any format must be reported in ECOS. In the upcoming August release of ECOS updates, EPPs will see a new field in which to report the observation format as either P for an in-person observation or V for a virtual observation. This updated feature in ECOS will be effective for the 21-22 year and will not be used in the 2021 data that is reported. As we saw with the admissions data and enrollment data, the observation data can be added either individually per candidate or using a CSV file in a bulk upload process. You will report all formal observations conducted by the field supervisor and not just the minimum number of observations. So if the minimum number of observations required for a clinical teacher is 3, but your field supervisor completes 5 formal observations for clinical teachers, then report all 5. On the other hand, do not report observations conducted by cooperating teachers, mentors, or site supervisors. Observations conducted by those campus individuals is a best practice and one that most programs require. However, these are not reported to TEA. They should be retained in candidates' records as part of the completion documents that must be retained per the records retention requirement in 19 TAC 228.40F. Also, remember that you will not be able to report an observation unless the field supervisor that conducted the observation is listed in your field supervisor database. To access that, select the field supervisors option on the ASEP menu. Note here that technology fees have allowed TEA staff to tweak the field supervisor database by improving some of the functionality. Field supervisors that are not tied to an observation may be removed and added back as necessary without generating error messages. To be successful uploading observations, here are some handy reminders. These reminders were developed from a list of common issues that arise each year around uploading observations. You will find additional tips for all uploads in the data reporting manual. First, remember the candidate must be on the finisher records list as either other enrolled or finisher. Second, observations may be entered only into the current unlocked year, in this case, 2020-2021. Next, the yellow block is a reminder that observations must be entered into the year in which they occur. If a candidate completed clinical teaching in 2021, but will not be a program finisher until next year in 2021-22, enter the observations for the 2021 clinical experience now so that they can be attached to the candidate later next year. Likewise, if the observations for a current 2021 finisher were entered last year in 1920, we will find them and attach them to the candidate this year. This is, of course, dependent on the observations having been entered last year. By the way, our IT group updated the data validation around dates. So the observation reporting dates are now aligned with the academic year 9/1 through 8/31. So summer observations for your superintendents or other candidates can be entered before ASEP locks on September 15th. The green block reminds us that the field supervisor must have a TEA ID number to be entered into the field supervisor database. When entering the observation data, remember the observation date cannot be before the assignment start date. And finally, the ocean blue block reflects an important tip that is the subject of many calls received by TEA throughout the year. The observation reporting system sees 3 certificate assignment types for internships: the INT, which is the intern certificate, the PRO, which is the probationary certificate, and the PROX, which is the probationary extension. We get quite a few calls from programs that get error messages and failed uploads because they attempt to assign an assignment type of PRO, to a candidate who held a probationary extension. That will not work. While we're on the subject of assignment types, I want to remind you about the recent ECOS enhancement that simplified assignment types. In ASEP, under the Upload Observations tab, there's a list of assignment types. We found the former representation to be confusing, so we enhanced the observation types to simplify them for your convenience. For a candidate who holds an intern certificate, the observation will be added with the assignment type of INT. The first probationary certificate issued to a candidate is a PRO. When a second probationary certificate is issued to a candidate, ECOS automatically assigns it an assignment type of PROX. When reporting observations for clinical teachers, you will use CLIN, C-L-I-N, regardless of the duration of the clinical teaching assignment. For non-teacher candidates, you will use NONTCH as the assignment type for a practicum and for an internship, even if the candidate held an intern certificate. We also added a link so that you can pull up the document that reflects the minimum number of observations required for each assignment. Not that anyone is going to forget that, but nevertheless, it's there as a resource if you need it. There is an option to generate a report so that you can check the observations you've entered or uploaded for your 2021 candidates. From the ASEP drop-down menu, select Observations Report and then filter the report for 2021 reporting year. Select the observation type as View All Observations and then select the academic year again, or option rather. Please remember also, as we stated at the beginning in the resources section, TEA will send an observation data set to you in early September. If you have all of your observation data entered by August 31st, then the TEA data set will be useful for you to check your work. I also wanted to give you a sneak preview of great things to come for this observation report. We are expecting some enhancements to be released later this month, I think later this month, that will include a reformatted, user-friendly, reliable report. Additionally, you will be able to export the report in a CSV file formatted the same as the observation upload file. This will allow you to download a list, update the observation information for candidates on the list, and then turn around and upload that file to add more observations for the candidates. We will have more information in the newsletter about this. We hope you find this enhancement useful. Let's now take a minute and review uploads. Each of the ASEP reporting areas has an upload option, as well as test approval also has an upload option. If you use the upload observations, upload admissions, upload finishers, or upload test approval features, and your upload file keeps failing, check the formatting. Sometimes the error messages don't point to the exact issue in a file formatting problem. And I find CSV files to be particularly ornery when it comes to missing data, stray marks, and table additions like column headers. An easy way to check for formatting errors is to first check the Excel file and make sure all cells in a column are justified the same, right or left as applicable. Make sure you removed the column headers. Next, make sure you've saved it as a CSV and then close the file. To open the file in Notepad, right-click on the file name and select Open with Notepad. You can see in my example that in Notepad, it is easy to see what is populated in all of the fields. Notepad will show you if there are extra spaces or stray marks. This example is an admission upload, which requires 16 fields to be populated, even if you are not reporting fields 14, 15, or 16, which are the SAT, ACT, and GRE scores, which are optional. In Notepad, you can just add commas as placeholders for data that is not being uploaded so that all fields are complete. Notice I added 3 commas to the end of my data set as placeholders because I did not report SAT, ACT, or GRE scores for this candidate. Also note in this file that my GPA numbers are 4s. They should be 4.00 or 4.00. So I could add the additional zeros in Notepad as well. Once I'm confident that there are no stray marks or spaces, I have all 16 fields populated with data or commas, and my numbers are represented to the correct decimal place, I can save and close and then upload this file. If your candidate does not have a GPA or does not have subject-specific credit hours, it is acceptable to enter 0 for those values. If you have upload issues and need a second set of eyes on the file, your education specialist at TEA can assist. Remember, if you must submit a CSV file to TEA for us to look at, please use the help desk system, which is secure and protects the candidate information that will be in your data file. It should be noted here that data reporting time is crunch time for TEA specialists too. So waiting until the last minute to enter data and request assistance may result in no assistance by the deadline. As in past years, EPPs may submit data exception requests to accept data points from the various data sets. The RFE or request for exception forms are posted on the Program Provider Resources page on the TEA website. These forms perform best if your Adobe software is updated and if you save them on your desktop first, then fill them in, sign and save, then attach them to a help desk ticket. Your education specialist will review the request and either approve or deny the request with reason. You should receive a return copy for your records. RFE forms are available for principal and teacher survey waivers, They'll no longer be available now because it's after 8-1. And then for observation exceptions. Admission records corrections can be made by the EPP or handled directly with your education specialist by submitting a written request to the help desk. If you find errors on your finisher records list that occurred in locked years, there is a data fix request for that. Your education specialist will provide you with the updated form and instructions to request the data fix. If you run into problems with folks who were never admitted and now are not showing up on your finisher records list, you can submit a data fix request to TEA via the help desk. There's a form for that as well. If you need to submit a written request to TEA for assistance with editing or deleting an admission record, TEA will need some specific information from you. Send the candidate's name and TEA ID number. Then you'll need to include specifically the information in the blue columns, which is the record change information, or the information in the green columns, which is the record to be deleted and the reason for the deletion for each candidate in the request. If we are changing a record as represented by the blue columns, let us know which piece of the record we are changing and what it needs to be changed to. Also remember that if you change one piece of the record, you may need to change another to achieve agreement. In my example, I changed the route, so I needed to change the CERT license ID to match the new route. Be specific with your request. In the second example, in the green column, I identified the record to be deleted and the reason why. What does our reporting timeline look like this year? I'm happy to report that it is very short. We can attribute this to a few things. First, the new exception request forms make processing much quicker on the TEA side. Second, there is no admission data to reconcile, since all admission data will be extracted directly from ECOS. And finally, TEA is providing data sets well before September 15th to give EPPs a chance to review, complete, and correct data before the due date instead of after. That all said, here's the timeline. You'll get your observation data sets in early September, and then all data must be complete and accurate and submitted to TEA by 5 p.m. on September 15th when ASEP will log. All data includes admissions data, candidate enrollment status on the finisher records list, observation data, and applied data. TEA education specialists will review your data to ensure all data is there, and then your affidavit of data accuracy is due no later than 5 p.m. on September 22nd, 2021. The 2021 ASEP will not unlock again for round 2 of corrections, which is different than in past years. Please be very careful and deliberate about ensuring data accuracy. Admissions, finisher records lists, and observations are all in the ASEP menu. After ASEP is locked, you will not be able to go back and enter any data into the locked year. Before we close today, let me reiterate some key points that we felt were important enough to repeat. Bullet 1, candidates that were finishers in 1920 and were placed on waiver pro certificates for 2021 do not require field supervision. These candidates were not completing an internship and therefore were not required to have field supervision, and no observations are reported for these candidates. Bullet 2, candidates that are enrolled and were placed on WENT certificates require field supervision. EPPs are accountable for observations in 2021. The observations provided to candidates completing internships while holding WENTs are the same as observations provided to any other candidate completing an internship while holding an intern certificate. Bullet 3, admission records cannot be created for candidates after August 31st of their admission year, so remember to check admission records early in the reporting process. This should not be a problem because admission records are required to be created within 7 days of the candidate's formal admission date. And finally, bullet 4 says ASEP will not unlock again after it closes on September 15th. So please allow time for September 15th, before September 15th, to run quality control on your data. While I have you as a captive audience, let me provide some reminders that are not necessarily related to state reporting, but are important for you to know. First, those candidates who hold or have held Waiver Pro certificates are program finishers. You will recall that was a requirement to qualify for the Waiver Pro certificate. As such, they should be getting test approval from you, and then upon passing the test or tests, should qualify for a standard certificate. To avoid a disruption to the employment of these folks, it's okay to go ahead and provide test approval for any remaining applicable tests so they can get the standard before the Waiver Pro expires or before school starts or both. Second, we all know the Core Subjects EC6 certificate has been going through some changes. First was the addition of the Science of Teaching Reading requirement and the subsequent renaming of the certificate to reflect the new requirement. Then the related certification exam was updated and renumbered from 291 to 391. I think we all know the natural progression from this point is to retire the 291. That's happening. It is important to make your candidates and past finishers aware of the related deadlines so that they can use the 291 for certification if that is their intention. The last administration of the 291 is December 31st, 2021, which is at the end of this calendar year. This includes the 291 subtests. At this point, the only folks that should be approved for the 291 are retesters. All new testers should be approved for the 391. The last date that a candidate can use the 291 to be certified, including an intern certificate, a probationary certificate, or a standard certificate, is December 31st, 2022, which is the end of next year. The certificate has to issue by that deadline. To provide a little context, currently the Core Subjects with Science of Teaching Reading EC through 6 certificate will issue with a passing score on either the 291 or the 391. After December 31st of 2022, that certificate will only recognize an issue with the 391. Of course, the 293 Science of Teaching Reading is now required in either case. Thinking about this operationalized, candidates who complete clinical teaching or internships by the end of the school year coming up, which should be around May or June of 2022, should make the deadline for certification by December of 2022, as long as all other requirements for the certificates have been met. It's going to be important for you to get the word out about these deadlines to anyone in your program or who finished the program that is intending to use the 291 for certification. Additionally, having a plan in place for your EPP, not only for the communication piece, but also a plan to process test approvals and certificate recommendations efficiently, will be important so that all candidates and finishers can use the 291 if that is their intention. Please let us know if you have questions about the expiration of the 291. We're happy to clarify and provide guidance around this topic. We hope you found this training useful. Please let us know if you have remaining questions by typing those in the question box or by sending them to your education specialist. We will gather them and create some FAQs to post along with the recorded webinar. Remember, if you need specific assistance as you work through your reports this year, please reach out to your education specialist. Also, the most efficient way to reach us continues to be via the help desk. Stay well, and TEA wishes you successful reporting in 2021 and a successful school year in 21-22.